Did you know that when God said, "This is my beloved Son," at the baptism of Jesus, he was actually quoting the Old Testament? Most Christians, they hear those words as just an affirmation of Jesus' identity. But in reality, they echo some of the most powerful messianic prophecies in the Hebrew Bible. You see, God was announcing in code who Jesus is and what he came to do. And once you see the connections, you'll never read those words the same again. This short sentence, spoken by the Father at Jesus' baptism, "You are my beloved Son, with you I am well pleased," actually contains not one, but 3 references to the Old Testament. First, "You are my Son," taken from Psalm 2. "The beloved," Genesis 22, "In you I am pleased," from Isaiah 42. My name is David, and as a visual learner, I have created hundreds of charts like this to help me teach the Bible. If you'd like a copy of this chart, you can download it for free by following a link in the description below, and you can like and subscribe as well so you don't miss out on the next one. So Mark starts his gospel with a ton of Old Testament quotations, but I thought that Matthew was the Jewish gospel. And it is. Matthew is going to quote the Old Testament 60 times in his gospel, compared to Mark, who only does it 20 times. That's because Matthew's writing to a Jewish audience, Mark is writing to a Gentile audience, probably those located in Rome. Therefore, Mark is going to take his limited Old Testament quoted prophecies and weave them into a Roman context, beginning with the first verse of his book. The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Now, there are 2 highly significant things about this opening sentence of the Gospel of Mark. First, Mark is the only gospel to explicitly call itself a gospel. And Mark will use this word 6 more times in his book for a total of 7. That is quite interesting. Compare this to Matthew, who only uses the word gospel 4 times in his book. And then surprisingly, Luke and John don't use the word gospel once in their book, but Mark does. He does 7 times. And this word, gospel, has both a significant Jewish Old Testament prophetic meaning and a Roman countercultural message. At the word level, gospel simply means good news, which helps us remember its Old Testament Jewish connection to the book of Isaiah. Chapter 52, verse 7, "How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings gospel," who brings good news. And what is this news? That Yahweh reigns in Zion. You see, the gospel is about the king and his kingdom. To this, the Roman emperor would completely agree. You see, Mark wrote his gospel to believers in Rome, where the word gospel was commonly used to announce the birth of the emperor's son or the victory of the emperor in battle against the barbarians. The book of Mark, therefore, opens with an outright challenge to the worldview of Rome. You see, Mark is writing about the true good news of the true Son of God. Because in the Roman world, everybody knew who the Son of God was. You see, his face was stamped on all their coins. This is a coin from the 1st century. It says Augustus here on the left and Divus Filius. We have a shortened form of Divus Filius here on the right, which means divine son or son of God. Here's another couple of examples. This is Caesar, the Divus Filius, the son of God. Octavius, I think that is, the divine son, the son of God. But Jesus is the true and only Son of God. And Mark is going to state this claim explicitly in the opening verse of his book, the Gospel of Messiah Jesus, the Son of God. And then he will devote the entire rest of the book to unpacking what that means. What does it mean that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God? Beginning in chapters 1 through 8, which is all about who is Jesus. The crowd wants to know. The Pharisees, even Jesus' own disciples, are asking in bewilderment, who is this miracle worker from Nazareth? This section has 53 questions in it. Pretty crazy. The second section, 8 through 10, Jesus is going to tell his disciples he is the Messiah, but the disciples don't get it. They don't understand that this is a Messiah who must die. This is a section that is filled with misunderstanding. But it is only at the cross in 11 through 16 that Jesus' identity as the King of Israel is made clear as day, inscribed on a sign for all to see. Each of these three sections is going to contain its own Son of God identity affirmation statement. In the third section, it is actually a Roman centurion who witnesses the death of Jesus and says, truly this man was the Son of God. And then in the middle section, God the Father is going to speak for the second time, saying at Jesus' transfiguration, truly, this is my beloved Son. Listen to him. And we already saw how in chapter 1, the Father says for the first time at Jesus' baptism, you are my beloved Son. With you I am well pleased. Now, if you like these full book diagrams, you can take a look at a free course that I've linked in the description below, which examines another full book diagram like this one on the Gospel of Mark. These words from the Father at Jesus' baptism, we have already said, contain not one, but three Old Testament allusions. The first one is to Psalm chapter 2, you are my Son. Now in verse 6 of this psalm, the Father is speaking and he says, as for me, I have set my King on Zion, my holy hill. And then the Son speaks. The Son says, I will tell of the decree that the Lord said to me. The Father spoke to the Son, and the Father said, you are my Son. Today I have begotten you. That is because Jesus, he is the fulfillment of the messianic hope. He is the King from the line of David, and he is God's response to a world in rebellion against him. That is what Psalm 2 is about. The nations are raging. The peoples are plotting. Caesar claims to be the Son of God, but God, the Father, he sits in heaven and he laughs at this claim of Caesar because he knows that he has set his king on Mount Zion, and this king, his Son, will rule over all nations. Jesus is God's Son, and he is God's beloved Son. But he's not the first beloved Son in the Bible. Long before a voice came from heaven and spoke to Jesus at his baptism, that same voice spoke to Abraham, saying, take your son Abraham, your only son, whom you love, take your beloved son and offer him as a burnt offering. For Jesus is both the seed of promise, like Isaac, and he is the beloved Son who is given over to death only to be delivered from it. And what will this death accomplish? Well, as the Father is pleased in the Son at his baptism, so Yahweh delights in his servant, the suffering servant, in Isaiah 42 and Isaiah 53. This servant will bring forth justice to the nations. And in Isaiah 53, the servant will be despised and rejected by men. And yet he will bear their griefs, carry their sorrows, be pierced for their transgressions, and crushed for their iniquities. This counterintuitive claim that Jesus is both the Son of God and the suffering servant is both the baffling mystery and the primary purpose of the Gospel of Mark. Mark is going to state this claim explicitly in the opening 15 verses of his book. In the prologue, Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is the suffering servant. And then he's going to step back and simply narrate how both Israel and Rome responds to this kind of king. And how did Israel respond to their king? The Gospel of Matthew explores this question through a series of 5 narratives and 5 discourses. If you want to see how Matthew structures his whole gospel as a drama of Israel's response to their king, you should check out this next video.